Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel, and we are going to take a look at the astrological weather forecasts for the week of August 24th through 30th. And I'm going to have one definitely very tough aspect to deal with, but two really nice energies coming in to bring some balance back, which I think we could all use these days. If you'll remember, I've talked a lot about Mars going into Aries and this cycle that it's in, where it's going to go retrograde in Aries, and it's therefore going to square the three outer planets in Capricorn 3 times over the course of the fall because of Mars retrograde energy. So we had our first two squares in the last 3 weeks where Mars has squared Jupiter and then Pluto, and definitely seen a lot of energy that came out of that, a lot of violent kind of energy, a lot of arrogant kind of energy. And now we're coming up to the third of the set of the first 3 squares, and that's the one to Saturn. If you'll remember, Saturn in Capricorn is in rulership, so it's strong there, just like the Mars. So we have 2 planets that are strong in their own signs squaring off against each other in this very tense aspect. And Mars is the individual us. That is each individual wanting to take action on what they're motivated to do. So that energy is like when it runs into a square to Saturn. Saturn's all about restriction. And when it's in Capricorn, Saturn being a social planet is saying to Mars that social issues are blocking or restricting your ability to act as if you didn't have those restrictions. So Capricorn energy is the system, it's the old structure, and it's the leaders who lead that system who want to continue to have order and discipline and law within that system. And Mars right now is finding out that that system is what's blocking Mars from being able to do what it wants to do. So what that is some very tense energy building up, and the who we perceive as blocking us is we start to get some inner anger, some rage, some resentment at who we perceive as blocking us. So people start to kind of simmer, and then we're going to get back to those retrograde hits come in the fall after Mars goes retrograde. Once it hits all them again, you're going to see people start to react, especially when it hits Pluto and Jupiter again, where they're going to act out their anger, their rage, their resentment. So the 3 squares, if you notice, the one to Saturn is the one that's closest to when Mars is going to actually go retrograde, which is in about 2 weeks. And so that's really going to be an imprinted energy of the next few months while Mars is going through this, of this just being blocked by like what's going on in society and those who lead society, blocking many of our individual actions. So on an individual level, what can we do to use this energy usefully? Well, it's one of those energies of endurance in building something block by block without actually getting satisfaction immediately, or success immediately. So it's like building the road brick by brick, climbing the mountain one climb at a time, being very cautious about what the next maneuver is going to be. So that's really the energy that we're looking at very strongly this week, and really through the whole Mars cycle of going retrograde and coming back and staying in Aries the rest of the year. This square is imprinted in it, and will be a lot of the background energy that will be inhibiting our normal actions. And so that is challenging. And, the best way to use it is to just work on some project piece by piece that you're building. Now, if you remember, I've mentioned many times, you and I and everyone else as an individual is your sun and your moon and your rising or ascendant, your midheaven, your part of fortune a bit too. Those 5 points really make up our individual personality more than anything else. And the 3 inner planets are what we do most of the time on this earth. So here we are, when you think about Mars, it controls all our actions, motivation. That's what it's associated with, which is a lot of what we're doing. We're acting every day in these physical bodies. And then Venus is all about our relationships, our money, our finances, our assets, our creativity, art, decoration, beautifying our surroundings, our environment. So once again, something we're very everyday bodily engaged in. And then there's Mercury, which is in charge of our communication and our transportation, moving around, our education and information, and business and commerce. So you take those 3 planets and the 3 things that they're really ruling or controlling in our lives, or are part of that in our lives, where we interact with them on an everyday, and that's pretty much 90% of what we're doing most of the time. So here we have that action, Mars really being challenged, our actions really being restricted. The Mars square Saturn, square Pluto, and square Jupiter in fall. Very weak Jupiter, which we've gone through many times. But this week, we have Mercury and Venus, the other 2/3 of what we're doing actively every day, in very positive energy signatures. So we can work with them really well. And what they're doing is they're both going to get involved with the Jupiter-Neptune sextile, which I've talked about several times. This is the best or most positive long-term aspect we're having this year. And it's the one where our horizons are expanding, like new information and knowledge is coming in, which is just changing our values, changing our philosophies, and expanding our ideals, expanding our spiritual lives, expanding our creative lives, our artistic lives. So this has been one of the few balm or calming or solving kind of energies we've been able to access this year to keep a little bit of sanity. And a lot of times that stuff comes in when you're kind of introspective. So we're not able to do as much actively this year because of quarantine and all these other things going on, that maybe that's what's kind of inviting the sextile to actually spawn this greater awareness, greater compassion, greater tolerance for others. And so that sextile is going to be activated by both Mercury and Venus this week, which is really sweet. So first Mercury, because Mercury is actually going to be in a grand trine with Uranus and Jupiter this week, in an Earth grand trine. Mercury is in Virgo still, so it's very strong in Virgo. It's in rulership and exaltation there. Mercury really likes to be in Virgo. And it will be forming a grand trine with Uranus in Taurus and Jupiter in Capricorn. So they're both in Earth signs too. So we're sharing the Earth element here, where we can really use this energy to get grounded into a real nice flow and ground into that flow. And Jupiter and Uranus together, their trine is just they have a lot of similarities. They really get very excited about getting new information and expanding the horizons and the knowledge and the wisdom that they have. So like when they get together, there's a great flow of that where Uranus is getting like, you know, new sources of information from other people, other places and stuff, and bringing it into Jupiter's value systems, into its philosophies, into its education, even into law, medicine, things like that, where it really changes a lot of those values and broadens them. Like Jupiter is all into expansion and broadening, and that's what Uranus will bring, this spark of wisdom and knowledge that like lights a fire and broadens like that wisdom and knowledge base. So they both get like really excited to be working in any aspect together, really, but in a trine, like, whoa, like really, like, you know, this is a real nice flow going on here. So that's nice, you know. And so when Mercury gets involved, we can get it into our everyday existence then, through our communications, through our information, through our travel, through our education, through business. So like first, on Tuesday, there's the exact Mercury-Uranus trine. And that's really nice in and of itself. Mercury is the lower mind, or the practical mind, the everyday mind that's making all our logical, intellectual decisions. With Uranus coming in, it's the higher mind. It's knowledge based on intuition and wisdom, like quick burst of like download of knowledge. So when the two of them are trining together, it's just like this great flow. I mean, Mercury gets really excited. It's like, yes, you're bringing me all this new information. I'm really into this. Like, let's pursue this. Let's, like, these new people, experiences, information that I'm getting is just like lighting like me up like an electrical shock. So that's like really, like, you know, really a good one. And then what Mercury loves to do with Jupiter, they work so well together. And once again, they work together in almost any aspect well, but with a trine, it's just like, and a grand trine, it's like the flow is going. Like Mercury will take that stuff to Jupiter and be like, look, you know, we can like expand a lot of things in the social world. Like we can come up with business ideas or new ways of disseminating information out there, or teaching others, and shifting value systems, and like within society and things like that. So like they work really good together, because like Mercury gets in there, especially in Virgo, that practical mind. Like, I've got a plan. Like, you know, they've got a large vision together. And Mercury and Virgo will fill in all the details so you can see how well this trine's working. Like, wow, not only do we have a long-range big plan for the future, but I can take care of the present details. Like Mercury has got its sleeves rolled up and is ready to do this in Virgo, in its most ingenious sign, you know, where its mind is working like pretty much like a computer, you know, it's got it all down. So like really good energy to tap into. And the trine to Jupiter is exact on Saturday, so we have the grand trine will be in orb all week pretty much to tap into. Now Mercury is opposing Neptune in Pisces at the same time, which is interesting, because what that really does is it can cloud things up and create misunderstandings, especially in lingual or linear ways of communicating, which is basically our language. And therefore what I think really may happen here is a lot of the ideas we're getting, we might not quite be able to express completely in language that is completely understood by others yet. So like, but it does make us sensitive to picking up energy in our environments and from other people's minds, where we can actually communicate in nonlinear language, like analogies and myths and storytelling, or we can actually communicate in non-lingual ways completely, like you know, literally psychic type ways. So that really does kind of fit in. Like I tell you, the transits always tell a story how they hand off one to the other. And So that really fits in with what's going on with the trine, because Uranus is gonna be downloading that information so quick it may be hard to like explain to someone in detail what you're actually seeing. And there is a quincunx too of Mercury going to Chiron this week, which will, I think, like have us be able to adjust our attitudes about our values and beliefs and, let them go so that we can take in some of this more new information. Now, meanwhile, Venus is also hitting the Jupiter Neptune sextile, and Venus is actually going to trine Neptune and be opposite to Jupiter. Now, once again, remember how I said Mercury lower mind, Uranus higher mind? Kind of similar situation with Venus and Neptune. Venus, lower form of love, and like conditional human love, connecting to Neptune, which is the higher form of unconditional love. And the two of them flow together, and they bring in souls who are meant to be with one another. So groups of people, or whoever other different people or singular people that come in under that energy can really have like a deep connection with you, where a lot of the barriers between you can be broken down very easily and like merged together. So it's like how it gives us create great empathy and compassion, and also a lot of creative inspiration, imaginative energy, like living a life of what would like be a life of reverie or romance about life itself. So very, very nice flow of energy there too. And then when Venus and Jupiter get together in any aspect, once again, it's just like, well, these are the two planets of benefit. So, I mean, they're going to get together in an opposition, and that's just a really expansive relationship. I mean, it might be passive and lazy and a little on the R&R side. Maybe it doesn't get a lot done, like in the business world and stuff, but like as far as like, personal emotional fulfillment and expression and creative energy, that's all easily accessible, because you got that opposition where you can see the other well, and this like really beautiful energy of these two benefits coming together. So I don't think that'll be too troublesome, really. I mean, you might like overindulge a little bit on certain things, but otherwise it's like pretty positive energy, really. And so what comes down to at the end of the week, on Sunday, Venus will actually oppose Pluto exactly. And that's really interesting, because that's like, once again, it's an opposition. So you can see contrast very easily between you and others. And it can be experienced in either negative or positive ways. And I think a lot of times older relationships are the ones that really kind of get a negative thing, because like stuff that may have been buried for a long time may come up to the surface to be dealt with, and it can be very uncomfortable. And some people are like, hey, I'm not willing to live under your power trip, or whatever it may be, like like some dark manipulative kind of things that haven't really been squared up. And like people but it can also regenerate the whole relationship too, like give it a new ground or foundation and to arise from, like a phoenix. But it can also be destructive to relationships and be a deal breaker if you see how people may have been like manipulating you, and you just can't like kind of you end up getting in a power struggle about it that can't be resolved. Then you could have like literally walking away maybe be the choice that some make. But in a new relationship, I think it's really good, because it's going to take newer relationships into like a starting point of a lot more depth where people kind of feeling safe about, letting out some of their shadow and darkness, and that person is not going to like react negatively to it, but see it as like a sharing of like intimacy that's very, very like deep. So that can be really good. And when you think about like the Mercury with the grand trine and the Venus tying in with Neptune, Jupiter, a lot of the information and stuff we're going to be getting is from relationships. So like maybe some of that stuff will take some of those relationships to this next deeper level, which will be a positive like way, but it's like definitely like some deep emotional like stuff discharging in relationships at that point that are, can really take them to some pretty deep levels if looked at with like the proper attitude. So that's a lot of what's going on this week, a lot of positive energy. And just remember too, the Mars Saturn thing, it can be depressing. There's a lot of people suffering right now, and remember, like, the moon is moving very quickly. Like, if I did a daily thing, I would talk about the moon every day, but I do a weekly thing. I don't have time to talk about the moon every day. But the moon can make your moon, not make, like, but it influences how you feel, like even from an hour to an hour. So like you may be feeling really down, like in a general sense because of being restricted from Mars, Saturn, but like then the moon might have some really tough aspect that day to Mars and Saturn too, and it can be a real tough day. And then other days and other times you can have these really positive emotions, and the thing is, making choices when you're on a real extreme high or low is not really the thing we want to do when Mars is doing all these squares, because it can cause us to do stuff that's impulsive and that we regret later from being too high or too low. So we really like remember the moon is changing, shifting every hour or 2 or 3. It's like that mood's gonna come and go, so it's okay. Astrology is all about cycles, so like the negative, or what we perceive as negative, is going to shift, and a lot of times that moon will trigger us to do things because it's really about our emotions, and we have these hard Mars aspects happening in the background. It triggers them, and we can do things in a moment that we can regret for a long time. And it affects the people around us too. We have, like, Mars forgets that. Mars in Aries really forgets that. But like when you make a decision like that on a high or a low, that can be an imbalanced decision, it affects all the people around you too. It's not just you on your island like Mars and Aries thinks that it is, So let's, remember that if we're feeling that darkness from these Mars squares, that it's going to come and go. And then, and then like the same thing with the exhilaration of the Uranus, Mercury, Jupiter grand trine. Like when you're riding that high, at the very high, that's not the time to make the big decision. It's like when you get all the information sorted down and get it all in place and organized, let Mercury and Pluto do their work and stuff, and then it's time to make the decision. So so just remember that. So I'm available for readings of any kind. matthuE823@gmail.com. I can work with anybody's budget. Just email me and we'll talk about it. So this is a free service. So if you can think of anyone, your family, your friends, or friends of friends, or whatever, who might be interested in checking it out, please pass the link on. And the easiest thing for me is for you guys to become a follower on the YouTube channel, because I do try to social media bomb, but I miss people. I miss dozens of people every time because it just doesn't work. you know, in a smooth way. And like, maybe we can start a mailing list if you want me to put you on an emailing list, but the easiest thing is just to sign up for the channel, and then you'll always know when it comes. I may miss you. And if you don't want the social media bomb, you have no interest in this, you know, let me know that too. It's all right, you know, I get it, you know, we all have our things. So anyway, until next week, you know, building step by step, using a lot of the information we're getting from other people, deepening relationships. Keep working that way. Keep working with the people around you. All right. Have a peaceful week otherwise.